After the rough calibrating we've done, where we've just done some rough measurements, put the numbers in, and we've then done the extrusion test, got the extruder motor to send out the right length of material, which could have taken you 5 minutes to 5 days, depending on how accurate you want it to be. We're up to setting the Z height now, the home height. Now, as you remember, we just got the rule and we measured it in the upright home position. We pumped that number in, and that's just to give us some safety margin, so as we knew that it is in roughly the range that we're going to move it. So then what you do is, after you've homed, you send it down to the Z10, so 10 mil off the 0 position, and that will vary depending on how accurate you measure. Then you get our old friend, the 4 mil tool steel, the round tool steel that we use to set the centre distances of the push rods. I've got a range of different diameters, and I'll use the 5 mil one. You can use your 4 mil if you only want to buy one. So what you do, you actually rest that on the table, and you've set your Z10, G1 command, it's coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down, and you're thinking he's going to hit. You're finally getting some movement, and it'll stop. Then you run the round tool steel down in this area here at the Z, and you go down 1 mil at a time. So you click that, boom, goes down 1 millimetre, you roll it under, doesn't touch. Boom, another millimetre, another millimetre. About 3 or 4 millimetres, depends, it may start then touching. So then what you do is you then start taking it up 0.1, 0.1. Doesn't slide through, 0.1, doesn't slide through. Going up, another 0.1, doesn't slide through, doesn't go through. Another 0.1, it slides through. Doing an M114, and it will tell you the Z position, and it might be 5.4, let's just say. 5 doesn't go under, but it's 5.4. Home again, then do G1, Z, 5.4, or whatever that reading was that you got from the M114. It will then come down and stop. Then with your particular type of tool steel, the size that you've been using, you then check, and it should slide under. Then go to 0.1 and go down. Now it shouldn't slide under. Home, down to that figure, slides under. 0.1 down, it doesn't slide under. So do that 2 or 3 times until you're confident that when you say go to here, it stops there within 0.1 of a millimetre. So once you've done that, you know that's the difference. So if we use 5 millimetre, for example, and that says 22.1, and we add the 5, so that's 225.1, and then we see what we've got in the config file, and we subtract one from the other, and that's the difference. We have to move the dimension in the config figure up or down. So you subtract one on the other, and it might be 0.8 millimeters. And so if the original one was 226, you subtract 0.8 and it's 225.2. And then you re-enter that in the config, save it, upload it, come back, start the equipment again, home, type in 5, come down, and then it should be just sliding underneath. 0.1 comes underneath. So then, instead of trying to get right to the table, you now have got an idea that your measurement's correct. So you've gone up and down, up and down, up and down. So then you go 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil, 4 mil down in steps with your piece of paper. Get your piece of paper and just slide it in. And once you're down to 4 mil, it should be good. Then just do 0.1 down, 0.1 down, 0.1 down, 0.1 down. And when you're going 0.9, if it's a 0.1 mil piece of paper, it should just start to grab on the nozzle. So then you know you're spot on. And you then look at that reading on the MM14, and that is what you set to 0. So 0 is then 1.1 above the table. So with the tool steel, you set it to the table, so it's 5 mil. Now when you're doing with the nozzle, it's 0.1 above the table, so it's 4.9 different to what it was before. So you then subtract 0.1 from that figure you just entered, config, upload it, check it, and away you go. So then you do a home, then you can go down to 4.9, and your 5 mil should still slide under, go 0.1, and it should not slide under. So that means you've got it right. So now get your piece of paper, draw across it. I've drawn one on there, just a pen, and you can line it up, set your nozzle down to about 1 mil above, line up the cross with the back and the axis that way, then line up to the tip of the nozzle. If you've got a laser pointer, like I showed you with the calibrating with the laser guided, you can use that, put it in, that's why the tube's out, put it in there, it will light up the little dot. you do it in a dark room, and then you just move the paper till the cross is lined up with the dot. So that then gives you your zero table position. But also while you're there, unlock your probe and lower it onto that same piece of paper. Now the reason for that is that on the other manual, they tell you to put the probe here on the Z column face. And our manual didn't, the Centron didn't, and I put it there to get the cable away from the wall and all this sort of stuff. So that's an alternative I didn't choose. I won't call it a mistake, an alternative I didn't choose. Because I like to see the probe myself, that it's in there. I like to be able to switch it on and off rather than at the back, stick my head around, all that sort of stuff. It's at the back, so as the probe is on the zero axis line, the x-axis line. You mark your pen there around the Allen key tip. So now the cross is where the zero is of the bed, and then the dot over here, or down here, or wherever it happens to be, is the offset of the probe. So you need to set an offset later. So you can actually just measure it off the piece of paper that's stuck to the table. So that's why you do all those at the same time. Now, I will need to adjust the X measurement in the config and all that, because mine is not zero. If you put it at the back, it should be zero. But that means that your probe that you put up, that crappy housing, is lined up, and that screw hole isn't half a mil there or a mil there, etc. So that's how you set that position. Now all you now do is you can raise your head up a little bit and get your ruler, and you can measure accurately that offset position. You can check the whole three to see if the extruder head is actually sitting cockeyed to the effector. There's only that printed diameter, as we know, so that could be sitting anywhere around. So that's to check that. So you can measure all them. Then to calculate these other dimensions, this one particularly from there to the centre of the nozzle was a bit difficult. But you now can just measure off the frame. I chose to use a Z. You can measure off the frame, and you got this distance. So to know that distance, you only have to subtract that distance. That's how you can accurately measure rather than trying to eyeball the actual measurements. So measure from there to there, from there to there, that centre of that bearing to there, subtract that measurement. From that measurement will give you that measurement. So you then can enter them into the config like we did in the roughing calibration. So then it is basically complete up to now the probing stage. And the probing has certain measurements that it does 26 mil from the centre out and probe. The little cap screw that we have on our table, because this table can sort of move a bit this way and that way, that distance will vary. Now in the other manual it says to put it 80mm away from that edge. However, they have other screws to hold their bedding. We don't. This one at the moment is about 80.3, 80.4. So to set out that position is to just move the effector manually across, just with your buttons on your screen, until you find out the location to an M114, and it will tell you the position. So that's what you write down. Also, if you want to accurately, say, do the probe point, you can just raise it up and then again move it left and right, and that will tell you how much it has moved. And then you do the opposite, because it's moving that direction and you want the reading to go in that direction. But yeah, you can just go along there, one line, and that will get you the position, the other line, and then you can do that. So note those measurements down, and you should be right to continue on with the probing. They recommend, just before we leave the probing, to manually lower it, then do your home, manually lower your probe, set the probing command, and it will then come over and push down, which will push the Allen key up, and the little spring on the top will push across. So before you do any probing, release the Allen key down, check that it is clicking with just a little push of your finger. The micro switch is click, click, click. But then just slowly push up the Allen key and see if the spring pushes it across. If it doesn't, you need to bend the spring a bit further, the old nappy pin across, so it's got a bit more force. So do that, and then you should be safe for when you're doing the probing.